The United States, followed shortly by other nations, began sending animals into space in the late 1940s to test future space programs. A dog named Laika is probably the most famous animal on this list. She was the first living being in orbit. Unfortunately, Laika met a tragic end. Traveling aboard Sputnik 2, she was expected to die of oxygen deprivation in a few seconds after 7 days in orbit. However, Laika died shortly after the launch on November 3, 1957 due to the capsule's extreme heat. Abel, who accompanied Ms. Baker in the conical head of the missile Jupiter, was not as lucky as her companion. 4 days after their return to Earth, Abel died from a reaction to the anesthesia used during the removal of an infected electrode. During the space race, the Americans focused their efforts on primates, while the Soviets launched space programs using stray dogs. Velka and Strelka went into orbit on August 19, 1960, accompanied by 2 rats, a rabbit, fruit flies, and plants. They returned to Earth safely and gained star status. A chimpanzee named Ham just beat out Yuri Gagarin as the first hominid to go into space. On January 31, 1961, Ham took flight as part of the Mercury Redstone 2 mission. During his short suborbital trip, he was tested for cognitive impairment. Fortunately, Ham not only passed the tests, but he was brought back safe and sound and lived the rest of his life peacefully at a zoo. On November 29, 1961, a chimpanzee named Enos blasted off on board the Mercury Atlas V. He was supposed to orbit the planet 3 times before returning to Earth, but the mission was cut short when the team realized that the cabin was overheating and that poor Enos's feet were receiving electric shocks. Despite this, the chimp responded correctly to the cognitive tests for which he'd been trained. On May 28, 1959, Miss Baker, a squirrel monkey, and her companion Abel boarded the missile Jupiter for a 15-minute flight at an altitude of 579 kilometers, 360 miles. Both monkeys were brought back alive, and Miss Baker enjoyed a long life as a space race celebrity and mascot. She passed away in 1984. Félicette became the only cat to have conquered space after a 15-minute flight on board the Veronique, a rocket developed for the French space program. She returned alive from her flight on October 18, 1963, but quickly sank into oblivion. Fortunately, a crowdsourcing campaign succeeded in immortalizing the pioneer cat with a statue. During the 1950s and 60s, the Soviets set up a space program to send nearly 60 dogs on orbital and suborbital trips. Veterak and Ugoliak were among the most celebrated for their 22-day orbit aboard the Cosmos 110. They returned safe and sound on March 16, 1966. On board the rocket WWII-2, Sam the rhesus monkey experienced 3 minutes of weightlessness during the 1959 Mercury project. Fortunately, the military recovered Sam in good health after the capsule landed in the Atlantic Ocean. Can a spider build a web in zero gravity? That's the experiment NASA scientists wanted to conduct with the help of Arabella and Anita, 2 diadem spiders brought along on the Skylab mission. The investigation, which had been proposed by a high school student, concluded that the spiders accounted for weightlessness in weaving. Unfortunately, Arabella and Anita died of dehydration before returning to Earth. Sam's training partner, Miss Sam, also participated in Mercury program tests, but at a lower altitude, only 15 kilometers, 9 miles. She was also found alive on board her capsule.
So that was all for today's video. Let us know what you think about it in the comments section and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our latest uploads. With that said, we will see you next time. Until then, take care.